motion for the approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? It passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 2, conduct a public hearing regarding the annual fiscal program for fiscal year 2014-2015 and consider a resolution to accept and approve the annual fiscal program for fiscal year 2014-2015. Lonnie Mercer.
We had a little technical difficulty. We moved some things around, so I'm going to be challenged on trying to figure out how it's going to work. Okay. Madam President, members of the board, for the hearing today, we brought the proposed budget to you last month, as well as going to the Personnel and Finance Committee. We reviewed that at the meeting on August 21st, 2014. The total expenditures are $179,762,456, of which $74,680,000 of those, $680,123 of those are for operations. These consist of state and federal, primarily of state and federal grants that are approximately 83% of those dollars, and the remainder of those funds comes from local funding. Fiscal control is established by individual grants and contracts. The annual dues from the membership comprise less than 1% of the total budget, and this budget would also authorize the executive director to approve and accept any funding revisions for ongoing programs, as well as to approve and accept funding for new programs, subject to the approval of the board or ratification. So with that, I would be glad to answer any questions that you have on the public hearing, or if anyone wishes to speak on the public hearing.
I don't see any lights on it. Are there any questions, comments? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mama. Next we have 3 is the resolution authorizing contract for child care training. David? There you go.
Madam President and board members, as we have been talking to you about over the last year or so, Texas Workforce Commission has really ramped up their funding of child care quality, and we've been doing it since 2009, training our child care providers. So we entered into a contract with Campfire in 2010 to be our training partner for these types of activities. That contract expired, and we went into a procurement cycle, full and open procurement, earlier this year. And Campfire USA, the First Texas Council, is the successful bidder. We're excited about that because we do have good history with them, and we know what a quality product they deliver. And they're located there in North Fort Worth, right off of I-35 and Meacham out in that area. So we're asking you to approve this one-year contract that would be effective through September 30th, and then we do have options to renew beyond that, but we will be bringing those back to you as we do those. So we're requesting your approval so that we can enter into a contract with them to continue our child care quality training.
Very good. Are there any questions, David? Any comments? Okay. I have a motion to approve. Do you have a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. David, you're still there. Resolution.
I'm still up.
Yes. Authorizing the fiscal year 2015 workforce provider contract option.
All right, a little bit of history for you. We entered into this contract with Workforce Network Incorporated 5 years ago, and we are asking you to approve the last of their 4 renewal options for the upcoming year. Actually, our performance has been really good this year. The workforce board has, of course, we keep the workforce board up to speed on all of our performance and everything, but they met on Tuesday and are recommending that you execute this one final year. And in your resolution, you'll see a pretty big number in there, but that's kind of tying a bow on the end of this contract, what the total amount is going to be, looks like the end of this 5-year contract. And just for your information, because it is the last renewal option, we will be going out for another full and open procurement in the spring for whoever's going to start delivering that service on October the 1st, 2015. So we're going to be busy in the spring. We expect a lot of robust interest in our work. There's a few more contractors out there than we've had in the past, so we're looking forward to that. So again, the Workforce Board recommends to you that you execute this final 1-year contract with Workforce Network Incorporated.
Very good. You know, there's a lot of work that the workforce does, so thank you.
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Motion carries. Thank you. We're down to item 6. Resolution authorizing contracts for caregiver services. Doni?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Agenda item number 5 is a resolution authorizing contracts for caregiver services. The aging program receives a little over $500,000 per annum for various services for caregivers of older adults as well as grandparents raising grandchildren. And we pass through slightly under a quarter of those funds to community-based organizations that are invited to apply through a competitive procurement process. And we went out for bids in June of this year. We received 10 proposals from 8 agencies, and we convened a review committee comprised of members of our Regional Aging Advisory Committee. They scored the proposals, recommended that all be funded, and the review committee also recommended specific funding levels. And so attached to your resolution is a list of those organizations and the proposed funding level. In sum, we are seeking your authorization for contracts in the amount of $121,318 during fiscal year 2015. It's our intent to extend these contracts for a second year, but to renegotiate the compensation prior to the second year. So with that as background, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. I do not see any lights. I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second from the law board. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. I believe you're also there for the authorizing contracts for independent care coordinators.
Yes, and I think we have also some instruction and training proposals for your consideration as well, which is agenda item number 6.
Oh, okay, I saw. All right, I'm sorry, you're right. Item 6, instruction and training services.
And our agency passes through about $75,000 per year to community-based organizations that provide instruction and training services. And we have a couple of different types of activities that we fund under that service definition. One is workshops for professionals on various topics, including affordable housing, services for job seekers with disabilities. And then the second category of service is for organizations that recruit volunteers to provide direct services for older adults under these instruction and training contracts. The organizations make sure that volunteers are well equipped to go into the homes of older adults and provide non-skilled support services that allow them to remain safely in their homes, typically following a hospitalization. So we went out for proposals, solicited proposals in June. We received 4 proposals, and again convened a proposal review subcommittee, which has evaluated all of the proposals and recommends that all be funded, but at a lesser level. And attached to the resolution is a list of the 4 organizations and the recommended funding level. Again, these would be 2-year contracts, 1-year contracts with the extension, with an option to renew for an additional year, with the compensation to be renegotiated prior to the 2nd year of the contract. So seeking your authorization to contract with these 4 organizations for a total of $70,947 during fiscal year 2015.
Help me a little bit with this. They train the volunteers, is that correct? Okay, do volunteers get any kind of certification or it's just their credentials to go into the home, into private homes and whatever they do?
The organization is expected to ensure that the volunteers are adequately trained and insured. We do require that they have liability insurance. None of these volunteers would be handling finances, but for the money management program, they're required to have bonding for the volunteers. So most of them also require that the volunteers undergo background checks to make sure that they've not been convicted of crimes against the elderly. But again, their role is non-skilled in nature. They're not allowed to touch consumers, and in most cases they're doing things like reading mail, helping them with light housekeeping, with meal preparation, which helps in terms of controlling the liability.
Okay, but the organization provides
The organization, yes.
the background.
Correct.
That kind of thing.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, now I'll entertain a motion. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign.
Tom Blum.
Yes, I will mark the second.
Oh, Dr.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll move to item 7, and that is the contract for independent care coordinators.
Each year, our agency contracts with care coordinators who provide a number of direct services for us, including care coordination, which is a service for frail older adults, caregiver support coordination, which is a program that supports unpaid family caregivers who are at risk of burnout, as well as our nursing home relocation and options counseling program. We have about $620,000 per annum budgeted for these contracts. And so we solicited applications in June of this year. We received 21 applications. We've reviewed all of those. 17 meet the minimal qualifications. And we're seeking your authorization to contract with those individuals to serve consumers who've been identified by us and provide services either in the home or in nursing facilities to connect consumers with services that support independent living. So with that as background, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So the source of these funds?
The primary source is Title III through the Older Americans Act. And for the nursing home relocation program, the funding emanates at the federal level through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is passed through DADS, the Texas Department of Aging and Disability Services, as the state unit, and then we would be under contract with DADS for those services. So primarily federal funding, but a little bit of state funding as well.
How are the recipients of the care selected?
For For the nursing home relocation program, the consumers must be residing in a licensed nursing facility and have been deemed eligible for Medicaid. We do screen and are asked to give service priority to those with complex needs. And complex needs can include having been in the facility for 6 months or longer, having a lack of housing, having co-occurring physical and mental disabilities, requiring assistance with 5 or more activities of daily living, and requiring ventilator care. So we actually screen out those who could relocate without our assistance. For the care coordination program, we have screening criteria in place that give service priority to older adults with very low income, specifically incomes at or below the poverty level, those who have little or no family support, those who require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living, those who have been in the hospital within the last 4 weeks, and those who have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or related dementia. And depending on our funding, we either require that folks meet at least 3, and in some cases at least 4 of those criteria. For the caregiver program, we have similar screening criteria, but it's through the lens of the caregiver. And so we give service priority to caregivers who are the only source of support for the dependent older person or grandchildren, those who are experiencing adverse effects related to the caregiving, whether they're having performance difficulties at work or physical problems, depression related to their caregiving. We also give service priority to caregivers of folks who have Alzheimer's or related dementias. So we've got screening criteria that are specific to each of those programs.
And do people need to know that that assistance is available, and is that done through counselors or referrals?
It's done through a variety of outreach strategies. We certainly work very closely with our nutrition and transportation providers and do a lot of outreach through home-delivered meals, through the senior centers. We partner very closely with DADS, with the local authorities, with service organizations. We attend health fairs. We do public service announcements. We're part of a national network, and so we have a lot of people who find us through the Elder Care Locator. So it's a variety of methods, but most often it's word of mouth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we request the time, but I can really put a face on this program. I've got a cousin who has cerebral palsy. She's 71 or 2. My father died when he was 39 years old back in the early 50s. Mother passed away 10 or 12 years ago. It took her 16 years to get through heart acceptance, not because she wasn't smart enough, but because of the cerebral palsy. It took her that long to be able to accomplish. Love to have a job. Really not hireable. She was in the nursing home. She's now relocated into one of these living facilities. A whole lot less cost. She is much happier. And I have tried to help her a little bit financially, but there would be no way I could keep her in the nursing home. No church in Abilene that said, hey, we want to sponsor her. So these programs that really hit you, you recognize that these aren't just people that I don't give a darn if somebody support me. Many of them are folks who used to have jobs, love to have a job, had something happen to them, and yet there's no family support for them. She was an only child. I had to be nearer her age than my brother or my sister and her other cousins on the other side of the family. And I felt an obligation to help her as much as possible, but I say there would be no way that I could pay for her to stay in nursing home. So these programs really do touch a lot of people, and getting her that nursing home takes the federal government tremendous.
I move for approval.
What's the unit?
The unit for care coordination is most but not all time spent providing services directly to the individual. So it would be all time spent talking with the consumer, arranging services on her behalf, The major categories of time that are not allowable as units would be travel time, and the care coordinators are required to make either in-home visits or nursing home visits, and training time is not allowable as well. But pretty much all other consumer-specific time is allowable as a unit. So it's based on real time.
It's just per episode?
Yeah.
Time
Care.
spent. So if a care coordinator goes out and spends 168 minutes doing an assessment, it would be converted to military time and be reported as a unit of service 2.6 something, depending on the time spent.
Units, 2.6,
Mhm.
okay, all right.
Okay, I think we have a motion and a second.
Second,
So all in favor?
yeah.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
But great budget questions, and I'll come back to those at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. We're now down to item 8 is a resolution authorizing executive director to execute a shared service contract for hosting and support of Infor Lawson software.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. In 2004, cities of Arlington, Carrollton, and Grand Prairie came to COG and asked COG to establish a shared services program for the purchase and support of financial, procurement, human resources, and payroll software, which COG agreed to do. Essentially, it was a bulk purchase. The software licenses were purchased at a 69% discount as a result of the 3 cities going together. And they got unlimited licenses on all the purchases they made at the time. So if the cities grow, they have more people that are having to access the software. It won't cost them anything. The second piece of this program is hosting support, which Arlington and Carrollton take advantage of. We have an existing contract with a service provider that we've used since 2006. We've gone through an RFP process to select a new vendor. It could be the existing one, but to select a vendor to continue that hosting. We're in the final stages of negotiating a new hosting contract, and I will say that because of the changes in the hosting environment, I know you've heard of Amazon and all the work they're doing, their cloud services, and Microsoft and Google and SAP. The hosting costs are changing, and they will continue to change significantly. So there's going to be a significant savings for the cities with this new contract. As a result of all the changes that are going on, we also put a provision into the RFP where the hosting provider has to participate in the funding of a study over 2 years to evaluate the cost competitiveness of their services. So that's also included. This is for a 10-year contract, and like I said, we're on the final stages of finishing the negotiations. We're just not quite there yet, so we're asking for approval for the executive director to sign the contract when we get it completed. And both cities have been fully involved in all the negotiations and are fully aware of everything that's been done to this point.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I see none.
Move approval.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Pose same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Tim. We're now down to item 9, a resolution approving agreements with the mid-cities and transit agencies related to Trinity Rail Express service. Mr. Morris.
Madam President, thank you very much. This is a good week for transportation. The first item that you have, item number 9, is a project that started back in 2002 with the advent of the Trinity Railway Express. All the stations on the Trinity Railway Express, the rail line between Fort Worth and Dallas, are in cities that are members of DART and the T, but they're extremely close to the cities of, say, Hearst, Euless, Bedford, Arlington, and Grand Prairie. So we as a staff went to the cities and said, you're getting benefits of the service, although technically the stations aren't in your community, would you be willing to help pay for the operations? And the cities have volunteered to do so. We allocate the cost based on the number of riders that come from each of the communities. We do a license plate survey or other survey techniques to find out what percentage of this 750 $94,000 over 3 years should come from Arlington or Grand Prairie or Euless. Those funds come to this board. They become, quote, RTC local funds, so the RTC can use these funds to flex and leverage other programs. And in return, the Regional Transportation Council funds with federal funds the transportation needs of DART and the T on the Trinity Railway Express, often buying replacement locomotives or passenger cars or other things that are needed. The last 3-year contract is up, so we wish to go out for the new 2014 through 16. We don't get into complicated inflation adjustments and so on and so forth. With regard to that, if the transit agencies had their way, they would want this number to be $2 or $3 million probably. We think it's a good faith effort on the part of the cities to help pay the operating cost to some extent as part of the process, so we don't develop sophisticated inflation or other types of formulas. Cities have been very willing to do so over time. It is a voluntary program. With this approval, we will go out and seek these funds every year. Some a little less than $800,000 over a 3-year period. And we have indicated to them that we are going back out on a new survey. It's been several years since we did the last one to see if the allocation of costs between the cities is up to date. So we're asking them to pay the first year. We'll go do the survey. We'll get pluses and minuses, adjust their bills for next year, and continue to implement this initiative. So I will stop there and see if the executive board has any questions on this particular item.
Thanks for your explanation as to how those funds are divided up between the cities, because I know there have been questions about why this amount allocated to city X, but it's because we use it. And,
That's right.
And it goes right back into the TRE, so I think it's equitable and fair. Are there any other comments or questions?
Move approval.
Have a motion to
Second.
approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Morris. We'll move to, down to item 10. The resolution authorizing receipt of Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Funds for the Air Check Texas program. Mr. Morris.
Before I get into the action that you have, let me give you some background or context and recent terrific news. On June 23rd, I was asked to testify to the Transportation Committee, Senator Nichols' chair, in conversations about the 100 most congested facilities in the region and why that's not necessarily the best way to prioritize projects. He also asked for other advice, and we brought up the Air Check Texas program and why should the state be holding $200 million of Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston's money to help balance the budget? And why couldn't that money be given back to the regions to fund not just the repair and replacement of vehicles, but other air quality strategies like intersection improvements or signal improvements or other things that the local elected officials would want to do. Since that meeting, we had scheduled a meeting with the county judges. That meeting is on September 29th to lay out to the county judges what this legislative program would be. We started to lay out options in the last legislative session. So now that we're preparing for the next legislative session, we wanted to get a consensus position from our judges and then to be able to communicate hopefully a similar position from Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston. Well, since the testimony, Senator Nichols called last week, and he is going to champion the legislation on the Senate side to return the $200 million back to Dallas-Fort Worth and to Houston in the Air Check Texas program. So it's a very timely initiative. He obviously needs some help on the House side. Phillips and Pickett are strong transportation supporters that we've already discussed this with them. So the roadmap is, he has asked our staff, specifically, it will be Chris and Shannon, to talk to their Houston counterparts, which they've already done, develop what the legislative position would be, something like 40 or 50% for vehicle repair and replacement, whatever is necessary to do the undercover operations, 5 or 8 or 10%, and then maybe as much as 50% of the money to go to air quality related transportation improvements, intersection improvements, signal timing, or whatever else the judges develop. He would like the position to be similar in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. We will reach out to get the House member support, both in our region and in Houston, as part of this process. We think it will lead to a $200 million return. It may happen in one budget cycle, if in fact they don't need our money any longer to certify the budget, or we get it back maybe in 2 increments, $100 million in the next legislative session, and $100 million thereafter. But he agrees, this is not a tax. When you go inspect your 1996 and newer car and pay $6, this money should be in the region. If they wish to keep the money to do air quality strategies, the state of Texas in no way should be holding on to those particular funds. So I think that is an extremely positive movement. We've worked hard for probably close to 4 years to bring this to their attention, since this program has been cut back 87%, and obviously these funds are being carried. So the item before you is to actually approve our receiving the 13% that isn't being held back. So this item comes to you every anniversary of the budget cycle, so we can get the $2.81 million and go ahead and, on behalf of the counties, get their funds to implement the Air Check Texas Driving Clean Machines for repair and replacement of vehicles in the region. Very successful program. Not all counties need the same amount of repair and replacement. So our legislative position would give those counties flexibility to get what share that they want to put into, say, the repair and replacement portion, and what share they would want to dedicate to transportation solutions. So the resolution is there for you. Be happy to take any questions that you have.
Well, congratulations. It was good news to hear this, because I know we've been concerned, because it is a good program. It does help the region. And so I hope that Senator Nichols will be able to get help in the legislature and get this thing.
And we'll have to get our House members all lined up.
I know.
Get them educated, and
Yes,
we'll need your help to do that. So.
I think we're all willing to do it. Are there any other comments or questions? Don't see any. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. And, well, Mr. Morris, item 11, resolution authorizing submittal of grant applications to the Department of Energy.
So the Department of Energy has a national call for projects to advance vehicles with different technologies. This permits them to look at greater energy independence. So we did a bottom-up survey through our Clean Cities program and reached out to other Clean Cities programs in and around the southwest part of the United States and try to get a bottom-up input on what's the best thing or best strategy to move forward. So we have 3. The Clean Cities folks here, Pamela Burns, who's our coordinator, working with Mindy and Chris, have reached out to Houston, Austin, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. We will compete against everyone in the country to have rental type vehicles, either rental cars, people go in and get their car fixed at an auto body shop, leasing companies, loaner cars that you may get at a hotel or somewhere else, to have them be of this latest technology, to give folks an opportunity to experience it. And when they experience it, then they may, when it's time for them to purchase another vehicle, get a vehicle that is meeting these particular requirements, that would be compressed natural gas or advanced energy technology. What we're going to see shortly is a blurring of the advanced energy technology, 8-gear transmissions, lighter weight vehicle frames, advanced engine technologies, integrated with the new intelligent transportation safety components that are coming on vehicles, and it's a real opportunity to deal with adaptive cruise control, where you're you're not stopping fast enough with regard to that vehicle, or your lane is coming out of its lane when there's a collision avoidance system on the vehicle. So the integration of both energy technologies and vehicle technologies is coming together very quickly in the vehicles. The second item, and this is a topic that is talked a lot about in our freeway management classes with first responders, is the training of first responders when it comes to the latest technology vehicles. An electric vehicle in an incident has to be approached very differently due to the voltage of those particular vehicles than, say, a regular automobile car. And how you deal with a compressed natural gas vehicle is different than you do with a regular car. So the second item is advanced training for public safety officers and others that deal with these new technology vehicles. And we're going in with Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, and I guess Austin is a state now. So it's Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Austin. Now, Austin sometimes acts like a state, I understand, but in this case, I think it's actually a cities and state partnership. Again, it's for $1 million with regard to training, with regard to the safety aspects of it. And then the last is with the introduction of biodiesel, and what is used, often the dirtiest of components in our waste stream, being used as a positive element with regard to energy. There's a small item where we're being asked to participate in the program with regard to biodiesel and people understanding better how that fuel program works as part of that particular initiative. So this is a national competition. We always come before you to get approval on what items would be permitted to be able to compete with others in the country. We think going in with other groups is a good strategy. The local match, if we win, would be in proportion to the partners on how much of the revenue they would need in each of those particular communities as part of that particular approach. But that would come through the League of Cities programs. I think, Madam President, I'll stop there and take any questions on item 11.
All right. Any questions? I hadn't really thought about the training for the kind of vehicles, the electric cars. You mentioned that just kind of got on my head. There is a difference.
Yeah, I mean, in the training, the first thing is that electric car ends up in the storm water or a flood. Can a first responder approach that particular vehicle because of the magnitude of that voltage? And of course, the answer is yes, but they want to make sure first responders are trained with regard to how to deal with these latest technologies. Now, Judge Whitley, advancing your thought, aren't all these things reducing the revenue that goes into transportation? And the answer is yes. These are all initiatives that, in the long run, reduce the revenue because electric vehicles and others aren't paying their fair share of the taxes. We've asked both our state and congressional elected officials to try to work with it as technologies advance to make sure they're paying their fair share of the transportation user costs.
It's like for the electric cars pay anything.
That's right.
Right. All right, then, if there is no other discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
Move approval.
A motion to approve, second,
Second.
and a second. Here we, all in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. We have, one no. And we will move to item 12.
Item 12 on your agenda is an action item. The Regional Transportation Council has requested that we extend the transit transition in Collin County for at least 2 more months. Or this is for 2 months. The local governments, Jesse and I brought in the request of the county and others to make sure we have seamless transition of transit services in Collin County. We developed a very comprehensive and aggressive program to meet the needs. Some of the cities want a few more months to make the transition. So we are reducing a small amount of money from Barbee Holdings, which is the company that's providing the the taxi service from the outside region to services inside Plano, often for medical trips to and from. Barbee Holdings is a taxi company. We don't need that amount of money. And we're transferring more of the money to TAPS. TAPS is providing the other, often door-to-door service to the other communities outside of the DART service area to make sure those needs are met. So this is a swap of revenue as we balance the few remaining months of the transition of TAPS replacing C-Card, as well as getting DART on board on how to transition from the taxi services to DART as people go to and from Plano, and obviously to and from all parts of Collin County to get their services. So the RTC approved a 2-month extension, giving the local government time for the transition. We want to give more money to TAPS. We don't need as much money for Barbee Holdings. It's a financial item, so we come to you for your support. We have to take any questions on it as well.
Any questions, comments? I don't see any, Mike. So, do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, motion carries unanimously. We are now down to item 13. Resolution authorizing consultant contract with DeChant Consulting Services for photogrammetry training and equipment.
Madam President, thank you very much. This item, which is not all that exciting to you all, is probably the most cost-effective thing we do in transportation. And it's probably the safest thing we do in transportation as well. Let me just take a minute and explain this to you. When a police officer comes on the scene of an accident, we have a whole method to maintain and preserve his safety of first responders when they're on a freeway, have them be police or fire. The most dangerous place a first responder can be is on the freeway, not in their other activities as a police officer. The second thing that happens, and we drill this through in freeway management that Natalie and I and police and fire teach, is there's going to be, if you're not in and out of there really fast, there's a good chance there's going to be an upstream rear-end collision that may be more severe than the accident in which you are dealing with. So there's a command and control situation, a safety push, and get out of the border as quickly as possible. This particular technology, photogrammetry, is a way to use a camera with monuments on the ground to take a picture, and instead of recreating the accident in the scene, exposing the safety of that person and the general public, they recreate the accident in the safety of their office back at the police station. This obviously reduces the duration of the incident, reduces rear-end collisions, and maintains that safety. Police officers have to go through 5 days worth of training to do that. This is a turnkey capability of both the purchase of the equipment. It has been used for several years. Police departments love it. The demand is increasing. We have committed for their safety and increase the reliability of the freeway system to make sure we meet 100% of the demand that the police needs to recreate these incidents back in their offices. So we went back out for procurement. We only received one bid. This is the bid from DeChant Consulting Services. It is a turnkey, $350,000 to provide the equipment and the cameras and the software to continue to provide this capability to our police officers in the region. They have provided the service in the past. This is a very specialized industry. There are other folks that develop other technologies to perform this function, but this was the one that did the procedure. We're very comfortable with the pricing strategy. Natalie teaches the freeway management class to police chiefs, fire chiefs, local elected officials, the coroner's office, towing companies, and we push this technology very, very hard in each of those particular classes. So with that, Madam President, I'll stop and request approval of these particular initiatives. We are using congestion mitigation air quality funds as the main funding source.
Are you providing the equipment to the PDs
Yes,
and they don't want to fund it?
I'm sorry.
The cities don't want to fund this?
We don't get into the mechanics of how all that works and how they do their budgets. Some cities, I'm sure, are funding it directly. Some cities may not have the money to fund it. But for the most this is the most cost-effective thing we can do in transportation. So we take this on, even if their city, even if they're not able to get these resources from their own city.
I'd like to see the cities that are funding it themselves and the cities that are choosing not to fund it themselves.
We'll be happy. We'll go survey that.
Okay.
You talked about the safety and secondary collisions that occur. But do we still have a feel for the outcomes of this, for what it does to reduce congestion during the peak hours? Of course, how then that relates to air quality.
Yeah, so they have to use the equipment. They have to give us reports and make sure they're using it. If they're not using it, the equipment comes back. Natalie has one set of definitions for the whole region. So, response time and clearing time are now all measured exactly the same. The Regional Transportation Council is extremely aggressive in this particular situation. For folks to get funds, they have to adopt the regional definitions. They have to measure their performance. You can't compare your performance across police departments on response times because they're all different, but you can measure your own performance over time. And these performance measures, and why we know that this was the most cost-effective thing we can do in transportation is we measure the increase in reliability, the reduction in congestion hours,
That's
the
what I'm
tons of
talking about,
emissions.
is those outcomes that.
That's how we know that this should be funded right off the top. And it's
a huge.
$350,000 for several years versus $270 million for one interchange.
Now,
So-
I'm not speaking, I will make sure I'm correct in saying that in the peak hours, the congestion we experience is really influenced by a breakdown or by an accident.
But it wouldn't be just in the peak hours.
And not just in the peak, but I mean particularly.
If you have an
in the peak
incident,
hours.
if you have an incident and you're coming home from Austin at 7 o'clock at night, and that police officer is out there for an hour, you could have a zillion cars backed up in Interstate 35 or US 75 for a long period of time. So it isn't just the peak period, but we measure the reduced delay with and without this technology and know how cost effective it is.
Now, I think the judge makes an excellent point, we'll certainly get that for you. I also look at this, personally, if that's not correct. It's sort of a demonstration project, if we can get enough people using this and the word gets out, then you'll have other departments that do want to get this equipment. And then at some point, we wouldn't have the funds to pay for it. But now, hope we see it as a real productive thing for them to have.
And we're having really great conversations between, say, police and sheriff's departments. For example, in Dallas County, the city is moving a lot of their police off the freeway system. So they're not purchasing this equipment because they're going to go fight crime. And then we're contracting with county sheriffs to be the managers of the freeway system. So they are the users of this particular technology because we got about 8 freeways where we're testing sheriffs to be the first responders and leave the city officers fighting the crime. So you might have, a data point that says Dallas isn't buying it, but that may be true for 8 quarters of which the Dallas County Sheriff's Department is now implementing those particular services. So there's a lot of partnerships and communication that is occurring between cities and counties as we continue to pilot technologies, grow and mature what's the best way to manage this part of the system. Half of the delay you experience is not due to the construction or not having enough lanes. 50% of the delay is due to an incident and accident, which is cost-effective strategies on this side of the equation.
Well, I think, Judge, I know you had another comment, I was just gonna make a comment on your comment. I think what you're asking is not the effectiveness of the program.
No, I'm asking how we're doing this. Is it, are you going around city councils, first of all, and how do the police departments request this? Because is it a push system down to the police departments? Or are they asking for it? And I really am interested in who's getting this $350,000, because if I heard you right, and I might not have, there are cities that are doing this on their own. And there are police departments that for some reason, one reason or another, are not getting this on their own. So we are providing it to them. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you what the next batch of 350 will be, but I can tell you what the last batch of 350 was. So we'll go survey who those particular cities are, but when we meet with the mayors and the city council and the commissioners and the police chiefs and the fire chiefs, we say 50% of the delay is due to incidents and accidents. And if you can't get technology through your city council to improve, like, for example, photogrammetry, it is the most cost-effective thing we can do in transportation. I don't think we're pushing the technology where the cities would simply do it for themselves, because if you remember in the 2008 through 2012 timeframe, we had lots of cities not being able to get to a lot of the things that they wish to. But we can find out what cities are using it, and we'll also find out what cities are using photogrammetry or something else, not through us. And it'll be interesting to see what those differences would be, and I think the question is a very good one. And I think translating, let's make sure we're not funding things that could easily be funded directly within their own community.
And not only, I mean, while we're still a region, the city of Hearst may end up needing one because a citizen from McKinney got in an accident in the city of Hearst. So, I mean, we need to have them, and it's one of those things where some of the cities may be able to afford it, and some of them may not.
And a lot of cities.
Judge, wait a minute. If the cities are choosing not to buy it, they've got other things on their priority. Why would this region buy
Because
it
this
for
region
this?
is trying to move people, and sometimes the priorities of a city may not be the priorities of the entire region, and because they happen to have a freeway go through them, doesn't mean that that city should be able to slow up the whole region.
Wow.
Wow.
Judge, that should not be, to override our city should not be.
It's a federal road, Judge,
The rule,
that they may not even be monitoring.
this COG should not be overriding city councils and providing equipment to their police departments.
My guess is if the city does not want that equipment, the police departments aren't requesting, because the city manager normally will not let that happen.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, Judge Huff, we do know that a lot of cities look at the amount of police that has to respond to a freeway system. A lot of cities are saying that's like an unfunded mandate.
I understand your argument, Michael, but we don't know which cities have got it. We're throwing terms around like a highway's going through a city. I don't know which cities have them. I don't know which cities are using them. I don't know which cities you plan to give them to. This is a very generic action.
I'm going to get that information for you, and I apologize I don't have it. I just want, can I at least speak to the principle? The principle is, there are a lot of cities, and we know this firsthand. Why should my city have to pay for this equipment to be on TxDOT's roadway when TxDOT is not paying us any money to police and service that particular freeway?
You have not defined this as a highway function.
This is only on highways, I'm sorry.
You have defined this as cities.
I'm sorry, this is equipment to cities to respond to incidents on the freeway system. Photogrammetry equipment works on the freeway system.
So my question is, you provide this to a city. Do they have a department in the police department, like traffic control, that just has this equipment, and when they have an accident, does that one person or department go out and do this? Because obviously every patrol officer can't carry this equipment.
So it is not uncommon for police departments to have police specialty that respond to incidents on freeways. And this particular equipment goes to often a sergeant or someone who's piloting it, who goes on the freeway, it's their responsibility. And then they take it back and say, this is helping us for the following reasons. It reduces man hours on the freeway and so on and so forth. And then they will either go buy more equipment themselves, or when we have a call for projects, they'll come out and ask for more of that particular equipment. But not every police officer is assigned the responsibility of traffic control on the freeway system.
So are we looking at it wrong? I mean, you have patrols right now that go out and help people with a flat tire or broken down car.
We have mobility assistance patrols.
Right.
They get people off the freeway system because when you're broken down, it's the worst one from a safety standpoint. They are not the ones with the photogrammetry.
I understand that, but so can't you have the same kind of system set up for this system that provides it to multiple cities or a region, instead of just looking at police departments to do this, because these people come to these, slow down spots where a car is broken down. It slows down as much as an accident when a car is broken down on the side of the road. And so can't this be a region-wide thing where you have an agency that just does this for the police department? They just call them and say, show up and take our pictures and...
Let me separate it. We do have a region-wide program for mobility assistance patrols. They respond to people who break down on the shoulders or an active lane and get them off as safely as possible. And under our home rule statutes, cities, some in unincorporated areas, counties, and now cities and counties getting into memorandum of understanding, a certified police officer has to be the person in control of an accident under state law, not a mobility assistance crew. And because we're trying to get there in and out as quickly as possible, we don't have a third-party technology team that's there. The police officer whose job is to respond to incidents, that equipment resides with their particular vehicle. Now, if they need cones and other things that they can't carry enough of, because any incident over 30 minutes requires the coning off in other facilities, we have people with equipment to respond to that, and those cones and everything are shared. But the equipment to get in and out of an incident resides with the police team that responds to the accidents on the freeway system, have they be city or sheriff personnel.
So we need to look at changing the way the legal system reads on this matter then. To solve this problem, if you want to keep traffic moving, the cheapest way is to have this technology, and we need to get rid of the laws that are impeding it, because you need some kind of agency that's certified to do this, as well as the police department, that go to an accident scene and do it for that police department, and everybody chime into the system, pay their fair share of use, instead of having every police department buy this system.
If transportation had more money, which it doesn't, it barely can maintain the transportation system we have, probably can't, given now the $1 billion shortfall in maintenance in Texas every year. You could do it like NTTA, where they hire the Department of Public Safety, and the Department of Public Safety manages their toll road system. Now, cities also can go out on the toll road system, but in transportation, we don't have the type of money to be able to hire, since you have to be a certified police officer, and I don't think that's going to change. We don't have the type of money to hire 500 Department of Public Safety people to manage the system. The Department of Public Safety is already into transportation at about $850 million a year in Fund 6. So right now, that responsibility under current law sits with the cities and or the counties, depending on how they wish to do it. And we're trying the best we can to reduce their exposure and reduce the delay due to incidents on this particular system.
Question, would it put a big kink in it if we continued this for a month and let you bring back the answers to what the procurement process is? In other words, how do people apply for this? How is the decision made that they're going to get it? And then compare it to who's paying for it?
No, I don't think that would hurt anything at all. I obviously don't know where the new 350,000 is going,
Right.
because those requests come in a continuous revolving, but we've done this before, and we'll find out how much money we've spent, and be more than happy to tell you what cities have participated, and do a survey of cities, what equipment they use, if they don't go through us, how much they're using it. My suspicion is they're not using it, and we're bringing best practices and technology transfer to the region, and this will slowly catch on, hopefully as a more mainstream function. That's typically the role the RTC plays, but until I do the survey, I won't be able to give you those.
Well, that would be my motion to continue for one.
I have one question. What is the cost per police department? You have any idea for one system? For this one sergeant to carry around?
Natalie, do you know offhand?
$5,000 per officer.
$5,000 per car.
That's it?
Yes.
It probably pays for, this equipment probably pays for itself in the first 30 minutes of an accident.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, okay, so I think we,
Well,
is that
what
in
he
form of a
said-
motion to table until
Right,
we just
for one-
table
for one.
the issue? Okay, I would agree. The only thing I would say is, I would hate to put another authoritative, going through the legislature to set up a system or a group of people that would come that you call. when there's
Well, I
not-
understand why, you
And
know.
it's just not, I wouldn't think we need another layer if we have a uniformed officer, so I would agree with Michael.
I mean, if you had $5,000, multiple people could get in this business and make that $2,000. I mean, look at the GoPro camera, you know, I mean,
And we're talking about 70 systems at 5,000 apiece. We've already done at least one round of this, so we've got 140 of these systems. I mean, that's what we're eventually looking at. That's a different issue.
Well, I think, we'll bring this information back to you. I did want to say one thing, of any city, that the city council has told their police department, we don't want you to have this, yet we said, well, we're going to give it to you anyhow. And that's the part I took a little bit of offense, that we're overriding local councils in their decisions. We have two things that occur. One is just, it seems like, well, it's a great way to save money, but sometimes you have to spend money to save money, and finding that extra money to try to get to a point where you can save instead of look for the department. But to be quite honest with you, and I lived with it for a good part of my career, police officers, firefighters are not really good about clearing accidents and about trying to limit the number of lanes in which they block off traffic. And how long it takes them sometimes is a badge of authority that I've backtracked up 5 miles, yesterday I backed up to 7 miles. So we're also trying to overcome that by building safety into this and respecting the fact that we've got people who are exposing themselves to these situations. And this is just one tool that we can use to help that, but it truly is a matter of, we're not going to outbuild our population of highways. How do we get the most efficiency out of the highways we have, and knowing that this piece will bring us to accomplish that. So that's, I don't know we'll ever get to where we're the only ones doing this, but just breaking through that barrier of we clear this thing faster and we can still be safe and do it is part of what all this is about.
I think, Judge.
You just covered it. Our officers like it because it clears the accidents faster and it gets the first responders off the roads faster. The baby boomer officers sometimes don't like it, but if you get a younger or tech-savvy officer to do the job, and everybody's happy.
Thank you. Okay.
We'll bring it back next
Jerry.
So is there going to be a vote or something?
No.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael.
Appreciate it.
All right, we are now down to item 14. Resolution to approve travel to a foreign country for Christy Williams, representing the National Emergency
And we are
Numbers.
going to pull that.
You are?
Yes, she's not going to be able to make this trip. we have a requirement in our bylaws, anytime one of our staff goes on a foreign business trip, other than the two countries, which to professional expenses, we have to bring that to the board for approval. It's not going to occur, we would not have incurred any expenses, President of National 9/11, 9/11, emergency numbers still, but it's turned out that she should go in.
She personally.
No, she can, and she was going as president of NINA to do it, so.
Okay. All right, then we'll move to item 15, appointments. And this is appointments for Department of Environment and Development Advisory Committee. Peter?
Thank you for Madam President. Today we're bringing you an item that is asking for your consideration of appointments for 4 of our advisory committees. We have our Public Works Council, our Regional Codes Coordinating Committee, our Resource Conservation Council, and our Water Resources Council. Included in attachment 1 to your item is a listing of those 4 different advisory boards or advisory committees. And the listing includes for your use, the first column is the representative. The second column, which is entitled 2014, is the current roster of members on each of those committees. And then the third column is entitled 2015. And that reflects either whether the members are continuing as in their term is not up this year and they're continuing on, so there'll be a double asterisk representing the continuation of their term, or whether the person has chosen to renominate or renominate themselves for appointment, or if they're not going to serve anymore and we've had a new appointment or a new nomination for a person that has been selected. These terms primarily are 2-year terms that these folks will serve and have volunteered to serve. And we also list for each of the 4 advisory committees, we list the chair and vice chair for that committee. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you have about these nominees.
The listing under who they represent, are these like the Workforce Development Board? Are these designated for certain sectors, or is this just where they happen to come from?
I'm not sure that I understand the question. Can you help me understand?
In the Workforce Development Board, they are required to come from a certain number from certain sectors. Is that the case here, or is this simply where they are?
Yes, for each of these committees, we do have bylaws,
Okay.
which designates, some of them the bylaws are more loosely written, and some of them are more firmly written. And some of them, like the Regional Codes Coordinating Committee, for example, specifies how many of the members are from the public sector and how many are from private sector. But they do vary a little bit.
Larry, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're at item 16. That would be status contract for redesign of the DFW job website.
Okay, I've got 3 quick updates for you. Items 16, 17, and 18. We just wanted to briefly let you know that we are going to be redesigning our website for Workforce Solutions for North Central Texas. We interviewed several vendors on the DIR list and selected Trademark Media to do that. Some of the things we're going to try to accomplish with that is even more data resources online for people to refer to, because a lot of the economic developers go to our website to pull labor market information. And again, improving the customer experience on the website, ease of use by our workforce board, and then online delivery of some basic services. And we're looking at some of the other workforce boards that actually provide services online, like Dallas County's doing that, Alamo's doing that. So we're gonna work on that. So that's the update on that. On item 17, as you've been hearing from us, we're on our quality journey, and we have, the board wanted us to contract with a Baldrige expert, and we certainly have found one in Joe Musicalski. And he's going to consult with us over the next 2 to 3 years to make sure that we are aligning the Workforce Development Department along the Baldrige criteria. It's a little bit of a minefield if you don't have an expert helping you do that, because it is a relatively complex process. So he will be working with us as a consultant, and Joe has a huge background in Baldrige. He was a vice president for a large international company, but his experience with the Baldrige goes all the way back to the beginning when President Reagan created this in 1988. So he's done more than 30 full organizational assessments since then. So he's going to be coming on board to consult with us and help us make sure that we are doing things right from the beginning in our Baldrige criteria. And then number 18, which I believe got flipped in the agenda. I like to come back to you every year when we receive this award. It's the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. And this is the 19th year of the award, and it's our fourth consecutive year to receive it. And many of your cities, counties receive this award. Richardson, Plano, Lancaster, even a town like Prosper can win it, which they did this year. But Dallas, Tarrant, Collin, Ellis counties have won this award, many of them consecutively since the beginning. So it's sponsored by many organizations in the country, including 3 state purchasing organizations, California, Florida, and Texas. And also this year, something that's new is it's gone kind of international. The Canadian Public Procurement Council is also a sponsoring entity of this. So one of them is the Texas Public Purchasing Association, which some of you may be familiar with because you're purchasing professionals or members of that. I see Judge Whitley left the room, but Jack Beecham, who's the purchasing agent for Tarrant County, was the founding president of TXPA. And I'm real pleased to announce that for 2015, I will be the president of TXPA and will be taking on that role. So just wanted to give you that update. And if you have any questions, be glad to answer them.
We're very proud of David. His whole program, but this is one aspect of it.
Final question.
Go ahead.
Define this award exactly. What is it awarded for?
It's awarded for excellence in procurement practices,
Means
which means like e-commerce, like surveying your customer base, having people in your purchasing organization that are certified. There's like 20 different criteria that you have to meet. There's 200 points on the application, and you have to get at least 100 points to be awarded. It's not an easy thing to do, even though there's a lot of points. They continually raise the bar each year to continue raising the professionalism in the public procurement arena.
Okay, thank you. And again, congratulations.
And City of Arlington is the winner of this award too.
Well, of course we are.
In Tarrant County.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. All right, then we're at, it's actually item 19, Aging Fiscal Year 2015 Budget Program Update.
I can't really compete with David. My last award was runner-up to Camp Sascombe, Miss Ugly. 1976. I really appreciate the great questions.
About as red as that dress you're wearing now.
The questions you had about the budget and eligibility for aging programs and screening criteria. And agenda item number 19 just digs into those details a little bit more. In terms of our budget for fiscal year 15, we're looking at base funding of a little over $5.7 million. The good news is that it's an increase. The bad news is it's an increase of less than 0.1%. And that's in light of a population of eligible persons that's expected to increase by more than 70% within the next 10 years. So it's pretty anemic in light of the demographic growth that's taking place. So DADS is our primary funding source. In addition to the base funding that we receive through the Older Americans Act, we seek competitive funding whenever there's a fit with our mission, and have been fairly successful. Next fiscal year, we're looking at approximately $1.3 million in discretionary funds through DADS for our Aging and Disability Resource Center, nursing home relocation, and housing bond program. And working on diversifying our funding streams is one of my primary goals for the upcoming year, and we're actively seeking contracts with managed care organizations that are under contract with the Health and Human Services Commission to serve people of all ages with Medicaid benefits. In terms of programs, I've provided you a laundry list of our programs, and the nutrition programs constitute the greatest share of our budget. Of the $5.7 million, nearly half of all that funding is dedicated to nutrition services, so home-delivered meals, congregate meals are heart and soul of the aging programs. In addition, we do have a very modestly funded transportation program, less than $300,000 per annum for the 14 counties combined, and that's curb-to-curb assistance, giving priority to medical transportation. We also offer information and referral, benefits counseling services, care coordination, caregiver support coordination, which I've mentioned. We have a respite benefit for family caregivers. We contract with licensed professional counselors to help caregivers deal with the emotional aspects of caregiving. We have a number of supports for grandparents raising grandchildren, very, very involved in advocating for persons who live in nursing facilities and assisted living facilities, as well as a couple of programs that help residents, nursing home residents, return to the community. We're putting more and more emphasis on evidence-based programs that help older adults improve their health or maintain their level of functioning. Very, very involved in medication reconciliation services, fall prevention, chronic disease self-management, diabetes self-management, and stress busting for family caregivers. In terms of eligibility for our programs, in most cases, it's determined by age, and for most of the programs, an individual has to be at least 60 years of age to qualify, or be a caregiver of a person who's at least 60 years of age. And I've talked a little bit about our screening criteria. In terms of the challenges that we'll face during fiscal year 15, I think prime is the budget challenge. Again, we realize that Title III revenues will never be sufficient, that we need to be very proactive in identifying and pursuing alternative funding streams. At this point, we're focusing on managed care organizations that under their performance-based contracts with the state Medicaid agency are subject to sanctions and penalties if their members have to be hospitalized for potentially preventable reasons, or go to the emergency department. And starting in March of next year, the managed care organizations will assume financial responsibility for all of their members' nursing home placements. So we think that there's going to be much heightened interest in investing in programs that help people either stay out of the nursing home or, once placed, return successfully to the community. Other challenges that we face are some restrictions on our ability to budget funds where we feel the services are most needed, and this is most pronounced with funding for nutrition services. The funding does reach us designated for either home-delivered meals or congregate meals. And of the nutrition funding that we receive, approximately 2/3 is earmarked for congregate meals. In our region, 4 times as many people want and need home-delivered meals as opposed to congregate. And the state will not allow us to transfer the excess congregate funds into the home-delivered meal program. And as a result, our providers have to start waiting lists for those services. Very, very frustrating when we have the nutrition funds, we just can't budget those where they're most needed. And that's because of the federal legislation. So we've been trying to advocate to the Administration for Community Living, which administers the programs as well as elected officials at the federal level. Other challenges are enabling legislation. The Older Americans Act was scheduled for reauthorization in 2012. It has not been reauthorized yet. The sticking point has been the interstate funding formula, which shelters low-growth states from reductions in funding and basically returned states to their fiscal year 2006 funding levels. In fiscal year 2013, that really caused hardship for Texas and other high-growth states. So at this point, we're advocating for reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, number 1. And number 2, we're asking that that hold harmless provision be lifted so that high-growth states can get their fair share of the revenues. And then a final challenge is even though our funding has largely remained flat and in some cases decreased, our reporting requirements are increasing, as well as the level of detail that we're required to obtain from consumers. I'll give you just a couple of my least favorite questions that we're now required to gather from anyone with whom we have a conversation regarding Medicare benefits. And we're to ask this question of, I believe, more than 16,000 people next year. Are you a dual eligible with mental illness and/or mental disability? So whenever someone calls and asks a question about, I'm turning 65, do I have to sign up for Medicare if I still have employer benefits? We're to ask them if they're a dual eligible with mental illness, which...
I guess to interpret that.
Well, and we've asked for guidance about what constitutes mental disability, and we've been told that there's no clear definition. And in some cases, it is necessary for us to gather very sensitive data, or helpful to gather sensitive data, because it may determine eligibility for benefits. For example, a lot of Medicare beneficiaries with low incomes may qualify for Medicare savings programs, but what concerns me is that we're required to gather the information even beyond the point at which we've determined that the person is not eligible. So many of these programs have both income and resource guidelines. If I know you're over income, you're not going to qualify for the program. Why then must I ask you if you have more than $7,230 in resources, and get into an extended conversation about what constitutes a resource? My contention is that there needs to be some value in gathering the information, and with these questions that speak to mental illness and mental disability, it's not for the purpose of connecting that person with a benefit. So in my mind, that's really overreach. And so through our Aging and Disability Resource Center, we have a series of questions that we'll be required to gather whenever somebody seeks services under Medicare or seeks caregiver services. One of those questions is, within the last 30 days, how many times have you consumed at least 4 alcoholic beverages in one sitting? I'm not a a drinker, but I'm tempted to start. Really?
Don't consume over 4.
And I think it would be very different.
What if somebody says, I don't want to answer that question?
Then we respect their judgment. Our requirement is to ask the question. Whether or not the person responds is obviously beyond our control. At that point, we would have made a good faith effort.
How is this information reported to whoever you have to report it to? How is it identified? Totally anonymous on your part when it gets reported?
In some cases, we do have to report consumer identifying information that may include address, date of birth, doctor's office, and it depends on the level of the contact. In some cases, we're gathering information through very brief phone calls, and in those cases, we wouldn't have the level of detail that we would have if we're authorizing home delivered meals or care coordination or nursing home relocation. So it is, in some cases, made available with our state agency. And in some cases, it's de-identified. In other cases, again, it's part of a larger profile that would be available to the state unit on aging. And I think it's de-identified before it's forwarded to the federal agency.
Okay. I think the one thing that hit me, I mean, it would seem to me the goal would be to keep people in their home. That's the most economical. This is probably the safest and the best place. And for their mental stability also. We all know that home is the best place if we can do it.
That's where most people want to be, and in most cases, it's the most cost-effective option. So absolutely, heart and soul.
You mentioned something about not being able to transfer those meals so that they could take it to the home. I don't understand that, but there's a whole lot I don't understand about that program.
What are the ramifications if you don't ask those questions?
It has no bearing on eligibility for the services. At some point, then we are subject to corrective action if we have certain fields that are not populated on a consistent basis. Dads will run reports and will say, North Central, you only reported these data for 23% of eligible persons. But beyond that, there really are no...
And I guess that's what I was kind of getting to, is if we didn't report, would we be penalized, and how would they penalize us?
We have had to develop corrective action plans to increase the percentage of people who...
So the corrective action plan could be to convince you that you don't need to be asking these questions?
If I could get that by, I would. Yeah, we just have to demonstrate that we're making a good faith effort.
So can you still count the person?
Yes.
If you ask the question about mental health and you tell them, you don't have to answer all these questions we ask you, you preface it when you're asking the questions, and you ask them the question, say, I'm going to have to ask you this question anyway, you don't have to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you still count that person?
You can
then?
still count that person, absolutely.
So even if you didn't get an answer.
Correct.
I'm on that same path in terms of prefacing your questions with, I'm obligated to ask, you're not obligated to answer. But I'm wondering, does that put us in the same boat in terms of subjecting us to some sort of corrective action because those blocks aren't filled in? Is that what happens?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess I would rather preface with, you don't have to answer these, and then asking the questions than not asking them at all, because I think that's a big difference. But maybe what we ought to be doing is, who's the, really going back up the line and finding out who decided they were going to put these questions on this questionnaire in the first place. And asking them why and what things, what.
What are you going to do with this?
That's always been my greatest concern. There needs to be value to the consumer. There needs to be value to the agency. And at this point, the response I've gotten is that it's research, that we need to understand who our consumers are, And I think that you can understand who the consumers are without digging that deeply into their business.
And without knowing an address.
And especially subsequent to the fact that you realize that they're not getting any benefits.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing is you don't know the security of the data. I mean, it's obviously not secure when somebody takes it home on their laptop, that you've just given this information that gets stolen. And we know that's happened multiple times. And these people that are taking it home on the laptop are immune from any kind of penalty. So, somebody needs to say, we need qualifications if you're going to ask it. Who does that?
I guess I would really like for us to maybe consider some sort of a letter, back up the line, past the person who decided, unless the person who decided this was the governing board or the elected official. I kind of like to say, okay, we don't care, we don't want it to stop with you. Find out where it needs to go, where this program originally began.
I think that's a great idea.
We have so many questions. Dan?
Yeah, well, really, I mean, it's telling you, in some cases, some of the questions may be relevant and important, but in many cases they're not. It's going to be like a decision tree. It's a fairly simple thing to use in the call center all the time. If the answer is this, then you ask this. If it's that, you ask something else. So, like you said, if you've already said you make too much money, then why do we go on and continue to ask more appropriate questions?
The analogy I use is if I go to the doctor and he says, "Are you male?" and I say, "No," don't ask me about my prostate. This conversation's over.
And there you go.
Yeah, we have a lot of those questions.
That don't explain it, I don't know how.
Well, I think we do.
Your presentations are a whole lot more interesting than more.
Judge, I think you made a good analogy and a good suggestion. So I think we can direct staff to please get something together that we can find out more about. Okay, fine, great. Good. Thank you. And I agree. I like the
Should we need a
presentation.
motion?
We need I think it's just a directive to staff, because this isn't an action item, so. Okay. And we're down to item 20. Molly?
And now it's time for something completely different. This is an info item on a contract that we will be entering into with Mission Critical Partners to do the THIRA. THIRA is the Threat Hazard Identification Risk Assessment. You've heard me talk about this program and project probably a couple of times. This is on behalf of the cities of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington. The THIRA is a program requirement from the feds that is becoming more and more important. And due to increasing standards, increasing complexity, and limited amount of time that we were going to be able to have on this project, these cities really felt like the best option was to bring in a vendor and an expert to be able to do this. They reviewed the vendors that are on the HGAC Cooperative Buy program list, and that's how they got to Mission Critical Partners. Marcy Bruner is our program lead with the Urban Area Security Initiative program, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. The contract is just over $70,000, and we should be complete with the document in December.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 21 is a discussion on the COG providing 911 management service to other 911 entities. Christy Williams. Oh,
Yes. Yeah, Christy is in Austin at a meeting, so.
So I'm stepping in. The 911 program has been asked to provide technical expertise and 911 services to the city of Arlette as well as the North Texas Regional Planning Commission. We will assist these entities in selecting a vendor and hosting as well as networking the new systems. In order to do this, our NCTCOG as well as NRPC will be taking this amendment to CSEC, the Commission on State Emergency Communications. This will be going in October to seek their approval to provide these new 911 service arrangements. Just as a matter of reference, we do provide contracted services for 2 other municipalities currently, and so this is along our shared services line that was mentioned, that was referenced, item number 8, with Tim Barbee earlier regarding the ERP services. So shared services are things that we do. This helps our dollars go a little bit further with our 911 services, as well as helps our local entities in delivering those services. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't see any, so thank you. And are you going to do the next one too?
Yes.
Christie's not here. Okay, the Automation of Public Information Act request through launch of geographical information systems. Data port.
This is really an efficiency item. We have many different requests for information periodically for all the GIS information that we provide. We cover a large geographic area. We have a lot of different needs that people do through public information requests, and then just normal needs that our users have. I want to compliment staff in coming up with this automated solution. We're going to be able to save basically about 1 month of staff time over a year. I mean, that's pretty impressive being able to do this, but then also put all the criteria in place to ensure that only the proper information gets released. So this is a technology solution. It's a win for our 911 staff, and they're very much to be committed for this. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't see any questions, so we thank you for the report. Both of them. Thank you. Did you have anything?
I was just going to mention to you this past Monday, I got a call from the State Commission on Environmental Quality, their chief engineer, and he was just calling to make us aware that EPA has entered into the consent decree with Sierra Club of California. California Sierra Club brought suit against EPA for failure to reclassify us after we failed to meet the 85 part per billion standard ozone in 2013, and not immediately put us into a severe category. So this has been an ongoing legal problem, but that consent decree, as best we understand it, our notice is going to be issued on Friday of this week. We did not meet the standard. EPA probably should have done this a while back. Severe designation brings a level of additional control measures or additional requirements that are pretty onerous. The problem, though, is that we're now under a 75 part per billion standard. The EPA has not issued implementation rules yet for how the state goes about finalizing a state implementation plan with control measures. And because that has not been issued, there's a fear that if this consent decree is entered and we're designated severe, that will live on even though we go through a new standard. Normally, whenever a new standard is implemented or promulgated, you're usually reclassified into a different category. We've gone from serious to a moderate level. But it's possible that this can prevent that from happening. So it's not only a matter of how you determine an attainment demonstration, but once you finally get to the point that you have met the ozone standard, demonstrated over a period of time, you're then under an obligation of no backsliding. You must maintain that level of effort. Severe has tremendous offsets for any new industry that wants to locate here. For every ton they bring in, I can't remember if it's 1.25 or 1.3 tons that they've got to show that they have accomplished a reduction somewhere to compensate for that one. What are now considered minor pollution sources will be put into a point source category. This gives many, many small businesses, and if not, they thought I couldn't get a permit probably, but it is the amount of paperwork and the amount of effort. And then what does that do to the permitting section of PSEC? So essentially, situation in which we are, that failed to meet the 85 standard in 2013. 75 standards coming out, they'll get a classification. The Sierra Club of California did not choose to sue the state of Maryland. So when the new standard comes out, their severe designation will probably go away and might end up at a serious level. Probably where we would be under the 75 standards. So we're looking at least at trying to get EPA to consider this. How far the suit has progressed. The first that I had been made aware of it was this Monday, but DeChant, I think, had a whole delegation from Texas on the phone yesterday trying to see what can be done about it. Probably one escape route a little later down the line, once the 75 standard probably finally has the way it's going to be implemented, the rules established. We might be able to get the 85 standard rescinded because that has happened in the past, and this would possibly be taken care of that route. But it's a really, really major issue for this region from an economic development, competitive standpoint, just from a simple fairness standpoint. The stigma that's there with a severe air quality designation. In fact, had it not been for this regulatory and legal perfect storm, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Where was this court decision?
Well, it never finally got settled in court, which EPA does many, many times. They'll finally just enter into a consent decree. I assume that the judge in D.C. probably approved that consent decree, but it was negotiated out. Now, we qualified it as saying that this is, I think, more than informal talk. I think there's real concern even at the regional EPA office that this probably does contain some language that they can penalize us. This is being handled at this point totally at the national level.
The last time when they were considering, obviously, changing the standard from 85 to 75, we asked the question of the EPA, do you have any idea what the economic impact this is going to have on our region? And their answer was, no, we don't know, and second, we don't care. That's not our business, and when it comes to life safety, we don't care. We think this is better for people, you figure out what it costs and just do it. So even trying to come to them and say, look at what all these factors are from an economic development standpoint, from taxation or impact on our citizens, it's not part of the equation.
I will keep you informed as if we learn anything. I'm hopeful that it's a bad dream and it won't turn out to be true, but there's a lot of people that ought to have a fair idea of what's going on that we're very, very concerned about, including our regional office has tried to interject on our behalf to a certain extent, but it's a legal matter and it's at the national level.
Of course, this probably has nothing to do with the 1,000 people moving to Texas every day. You know, the fact they're moving from one place, from California.
Well, the fact that air travels all over, and we certainly have contributed to other people's problems, but we get a lot of help in and out of ourselves. But this is not the way to approach it, particularly year.
And we have contacted our cities, and does everyone know about this?
I don't know. I probably went a little farther than the person that DeChant intended for me to from out of the There's a situation when you got a hold of the White House and please get them to look into this and talk to EPA about is this in there, and so what can we do about it? Is this fair? Is this so I haven't. I know the Fort Worth mayor. I know the Dallas mayor. Kind of contacted
The reason I asked the question is because many cities are working on economic, I mean, that's one of our top priorities right
absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
And so if we're working on it and all of a sudden we find out that, hey, this changes a lot of
Yeah, and
negotiated power.
it's not going to affect every economic thing that happens. A lot of them want emitters, but
Not anymore.
that's
Well, it's serious, and I would hope that you keep us all abreast.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And email you, let us know what's going on. Okay. All right, if there's any, is there any old or new business anyone would like to discuss or future calendar agenda items? Then we are adjourned, and thank you, and I'll see you next month.